Newcastle United has been in the news for all the wrong reasons in the last 13 years under the ownership of the much-maligned Mike Ashley, the CEO of sporting goods retailer Sports Direct. Under Ashley's tenure, the club has been relegated twice, including it happening in just his second year in charge. The club has only finished higher than 10th once in his tenure, when in 2011-2012 they finished 5th and made the Europa League quarterfinals the following season. His low profile and lack of investment into the squad have drawn the fans' ire, and most Newcastle seasons lack ambition and always see them tease another relegation before normally landing around 12th or 13th in the table. Ashley has apologized for past mistakes just to then either make the same ones or new ones. And after Newcastle's first relegation, he publicly put the club up for sale in September 2008 and then again in June 2009 just to take it off the market both times. He again put it up for sale in October 2017, and since then no one knows for sure if he's just a difficult seller or an unwilling one. This is an important difference that Newcastle fans deserve an answer to. To start, let's look at the three main players in the takeover bid and the general context of the bid's details and timeline. On January 25th, it was reported by Sky Sports and other outlets that Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund were in initial talks to buy Newcastle. They are the first of the three pillars in this bid. Set to take an 80% stake in the new ownership consortium, the Saudi Arabia Public Investment Fund, or PIF, were to be the majority shareholders, and the representative to sit on Newcastle's board was to be a man named Yasser Al-Rumayyan, the governor of the investment fund, which was believed to have over 291 billion British pounds in assets. There is no question that with the validity of financial fair play oversight being in ruins thanks to the Manchester City case, that Newcastle would have a significant investment in squad overhaul. Because of the majority stake, Al-Rumayyan would have been named the chairman of the club, but from here the ownership structure gets really murky. The next person involved is British businesswoman Amanda Staveley, whose backstory is quite remarkable. She once turned down a marriage proposal from Prince Andrew to focus on her business investments, and has become arguably the most powerful non-Arab businesswoman in the Middle East. Her private equity firm, PCP Capital Partners, would take a 10% stake in the ownership, set up with Staveley being appointed on the board of directors. PCP acts as a, quote, vehicle for the investment of Middle Eastern money, and Staveley's role is to act as an advisor to these deals. In 2008, during the worldwide financial crisis, she helped broker a multi-million-dollar deal between Barclays and Middle East investors, as Barclays opted to raise funds privately instead of accepting bailout money from the British government. One of these investors is the current owner of Manchester City and City Football Group, Sheikh Mansour. With their growing relationship and Mansour's £2 billion profit on his Barclays investment, he and the Abu Dhabi United Group purchased Manchester City later in 2008 for around £250 million. Staveley worked on behalf of former City owner as an intermediary to Thaksin Shinawatra and the Mansour Group to finalize the deal, and according to reports, Mansour was more willing to do the deal because they were working with Staveley. 10 years ago, she was an intermediary of a deal that nearly went through to buy Liverpool from Tom Hicks with Sheikh Maktoum and his Dubai consortium. If it passed, she would have been a Liverpool board member. PCP Capital Partners made 3 bids to buy Newcastle in 2017, but were rebuffed each time by Ashley. With a net worth of about £115 million, Staveley and her equity firm were more than capable of holding their end of the bargain. The last element to the ownership group are David and Simon Rubin, who would get the last 10% stake in the ownership. With a net worth of about £16 billion, they are listed as the second wealthiest family in the UK and will be brought on board due to their vast real estate investments in property, especially in the northeast area. With the Saudis open to more investment in the area, a similar style project to the City Etihad campus and other neighborhood charity was supposedly a part of the Rubins being on board. So you have the significant wealth of the Saudis, the negotiating expertise of Staveley, and the real estate and funds of the Rubin brothers to make the potential for the club and the surrounding Newcastle area very promising. So where did it go all wrong? What has been the most frustrating part for Toon fans is that with all the reports coming out, there isn't one clear reason that this bid failed. Normally, it's either a difference in price valuation or the Premier League rejecting the sale for various reasons. But for this bid, it was neither of those. Let's go over 4 problems that arose and that may have sunk the bid. But in order for these reasons to make sense, we need a bit more context on the timeline of events. It was reported on April 9th that the PCP Capital Partners and Mike Ashley had agreed to a deal around £300 million. Only after a fee is agreed upon and submitted to the Premier League do the officials then go over an official owners and directors test. This test, or evaluation, goes over things like proof of funds, any legal or criminal history, and anything else that could be detrimental to the league's image or their sponsors. According to The Athletic, this officially began 16 weeks ago. A week after the agreement, Staveley paid the £17 million initial deposit to Ashley, a sign that things were indeed very real. But from here, third-party criticism and the Premier League doubt started to creep in. The first issue is that the Premier League held in doubt the validity of the public investment fund from Saudi Arabia, who were set to take the majority percentage of ownership. The biggest concern for the Premier League was the separation of the PIF from the state's dealings, as they didn't want the club to be essentially state-run. You can see why, as Newcastle's Saudi owners would be far and away the richest in the top flight, leaving serious concerns over financial fair play and competitive balance. In addition, while Yasser Al-Rumayyan would act as the chairman of Newcastle technically and as the governor of the PIF, the chairman of the PIF is Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince and Deputy Prime Minister of Saudi Arabia. This government relationship is a big concern, as weeks after the bid, several third-party organizations like Amnesty International and other human rights groups called into question to the fact that the direct ties to Salman are a very serious worry for various reasons, including Saudi Arabia's policy on homosexuality, Salman's role in the conflicts in Yemen and Lebanon, and his role in ordering the killing of Saudi dissident and Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi in 2018 by 15 people within the Saudi government at a Saudi consulate in Turkey. Khashoggi's fiancé wrote Richard Masters, the man overseeing parts of the takeover, to reject the bid, claiming the Saudi government was trying to sports wash its reputation by using the Premier League. Can the group he is the chairman of really only have Al-Rumayyan, the governor, pulling the strings? It's unknown, but many people say no. The second issue that came up was sort of related, and it was in the structure of the ownership group itself. Amanda Staveley took on the lead role in negotiations, and many news outlets even reported it was the Staveley-led consortium. But the fact that she had such power despite only owning 10% meant the Premier League needed to see a central lead figure from the Saudi PIF, which is why Al-Rumayyan stepped in. This ownership group were attempting the same PR trick Manchester City used in order to sidestep human rights concerns, which is to promote a wealthy businessman look to the forefront instead of the powerful political leader, even though the two still work closely together. In City's case, Sheikh Mansour is seen as a wealthy businessman in place of Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi. In this case, it's Al-Rumayyan lower on the pecking order with his business background instead of Mohammed bin Salman. Again, the separation of these figures is very hard to enforce, and the other unnamed Saudi figures added to the board reportedly left the Premier League with more doubts. The other board members were to include Staveley, Jamie Rubin, the son of David, and Mehrdad Ghedussi, the husband of Staveley and an Iranian-born businessman, plus the unnamed Saudi figures. The third issue is the piracy issue that are the signal of the growing tensions in the Arab Cold War between Qatar and Saudi Arabia. beIN Sports, on April 22nd, urged the Premier League to block the takeover, claiming that Saudi Arabia was funding illegal streaming websites for the Premier League games despite the Qatari-headquartered beIN operation. On June 16th, the World Trade Organization discovered that prominent Saudi nationals were promoting illegal broadcasts through the services of BOutQ, and beIN executives said that they had lost nearly $500 million from the piracy in the region. beIN has the rights as the broadcaster of the Premier League games in the Middle East and North Africa, and there were worries that they may pull out of the deal if the takeover bid was accepted. A major setback to settling this issue happened in July when beIN Sports was banned from operating in Saudi Arabia. Staveley said that this wasn't going to derail the takeover necessarily, but they wanted to get it fixed anyway. Angus MacNeil of the British Parliament even wrote to the government saying that the issue of piracy should be enough to stop the bid. The fourth issue was the length of time it took for the Premier League to handle the process. The Premier League had said from the beginning that they were working under no specific timetable, but according to a recent Athletic report, the Premier League gave Staveley private assurances both before and during negotiations with Ashley in mid-April that the deal would go through, but this tune changed around June, when the Premier League stated that they wouldn't set a timeline whether to approve or reject. Also in their report, it states that Liverpool and Tottenham were working behind the scenes adamantly to oppose the takeover, something Staveley mentioned after all parties pulled out on July 30th. The Premier League was forced to decide between appeasing the very valid concerns about illegal activity and human rights with the PIF, and balancing the potential economic boom to the Premier League by having another high-valuation club under its watch. They tried to delay it as long as possible, but the decision was made for them unexpectedly when the bid was pulled. So what happens now? On June 17th, Newcastle had received a $350 million USD bid from an American businessman named Henry Morris, who runs TV station Clear TV. The Athletic claims he's not a serious rival for the club, but he's still been heavily linked and can now be in pole position to take over. The PIF claimed that they were going to invest £250 million into the club and surrounding region for infrastructure projects, and Staveley was so convinced that the deal was going to happen that she went house hunting in the Newcastle area. Now begs the question, what happens with the short layover, the transfer market, and planning with Steve Bruce, the manager, for next season? The transfer budget could be as low as £30 million, and while Ashley is supposedly desperate to depart as owner, he has dragged that process along for 13 years. Will there be new owners before the start of next season? Unfortunately, if history is any indication, Mike Ashley's regime won't give the answers Newcastle fans want to hear, and worse, will dangle the sense of hope to fans and then snatch it away.